Hi artists, this demo is going to talk a bit about the steps in terms of painting a watercolor portrait or of either your human or animal. The idea, as always, is to work from light washes of color, lighter tones, in through the dark tones, and continuing to make changes until you feel that you've created a harmonious portrait. You'll notice we don't want to put anything in the background. I will talk about backgrounds in a later demo. The idea for today is that you're looking really closely at your best photo reference, and then you're going to start building things in, again, in layers from light to dark. Your new best friends for this are going to be having some paper towel nearby, having a lot of these little watercolor test papers, and remembering the importance of our color wheel, specifically the primary colors. People often ask about things like skin tones, and the truth is, of course, there is no such thing as just a skin tone. But if I mix this yellow here with a red, I'm sort of given an orange. I can see a peachy area here in the neck. I can see pink tones. So I'm just gonna sort of pick and choose those two tones together, okay? And that looks pretty strong there, but this is where, as you try to build a general tone, you wanna use your test paper. You wanna hold it right up to your picture. So I can actually see that that tone, with maybe a little more dilution from water, is a useful tone in some parts now of her neck. So near this shirt, okay? And you're not trying to get too specific right away. You wanna let those tones fall. I've started with 1 or 2 layers already, and just gradually building up. Okay, here near the hairline, the corner, okay? And we're just wanting to build and lay down those types of deep tones throughout. Using a bigger brush, if I needed to get more into this nose here, I would pull that same color that's still on my palette in the mixing area, start to pull it into other areas, okay? Not wanting to get too heavy-handed with really anything, just noticing where that might be useful as a shadow down this cheek here. And if it ever feels a bit too strong, okay, which it does on this side of the face where there's lots of light, you just take your paper towel and use the lifting out technique. So I'm working and I'm building. If I wanted to deepen this sort of peachy orangey tone, the way to do it is to add a bit of the opposite or complementary color. So really important thing as well in mixing, I'm just gonna activate this blue, just a small amount of it, okay? And I can bring that brush into this one. The littlest amount is gonna really start to dull down that orange tone. Mix all of it, incorporate well. If I needed a much more shadowed area or more of browns, blacks, and grays, that's how you start to mix in those types of tones. So it's using those primary colors mainly here and into shadows. So I can see quite a strong shadow coming up in this dimple. Again, another dimple here. This side of the nose, there's a lot of strong shadows that I haven't started to indicate, but I'm keeping it still lighter than I ultimately might go. Okay? Eventually, as you build these tones, these skin tones, you're going to want to probably get a fairly deep color, and that just basically involves, if I mixed a small amount here, using I'll use a couple of different blues. Again, any two opposite colors, but you'll need them in equal intensity. So I'd have to come in with a pretty intense blue, a pretty intense red, which is giving me that deep purple right now, and then a really good amount of an intense yellow. Sometimes you have to go a little bit back and forth, like that might have gone a bit strong on the yellow and it's not looking neutral enough to me, so it needs maybe a bit more blue. You kind of end up with these lovely deeper brown rich tones, which is a nice segue into the animal part of the portrait. So for the animals, if they have fur, if they have scales, again, you just want to start, I'm being careful near the hand here, with general light tones. Then you can begin to build up deeper tones. And then depending on your brush, with things like hair, with things like fur, or even scales, you're going to let that brush layer and build in the direction that you see it going. And you'd very likely have to allow this layer to dry. Just come into the face a little bit here. See, I've laid down these lighter sort of tortoise tones first. I don't want to be too crazy with it. And if I put one color somewhere, it really helps to sort of balance that color elsewhere. Very rarely are they in isolation from one another. Okay, so I can come in here, down the ear. And remember too, if you've mixed a color and you like it, but you need it lighter, just come in with lots more water. Test it again, and you can achieve those different values or gradations. So now this feels a bit better for me to that inner part of the ear that's in the light. Maybe these light shadows between fingers, okay, and so on. If you're working in a large area, let's say I wanted to start to indicate this sort of black shirt. Again, I don't want to be too strong with it, so I'm just going to mix using my blues, try to get more of a gray or black. So it's not as strong as it is in the reference. That's okay. I want to just build that up slowly, and I want to leave places where the hair is falling, right, or where that shirt has its little ring on the collar. So I can use a nice large brush just for a wash of color, either a flat wash or a graded wash. Make sure to get every area that you need it, okay, while you have that color on hand. So down here. And then I'll switch to, you know, a more appropriately sized brush to do this smaller area or to go back over any edges. And maybe that's a nice color to come in around the teeth in the shadows. Again, not making anything too strong. Okay, maybe starting to come in with these glasses as well, or with the eyelash line. And so on. Okay, if it gets a bit dark, again, I'm not loving how that's drying, I'm going to lift out. If you need to protect any areas, let's say in the teeth or in the eyes, a highlight or something on your animal's nose or jewelry, you can use one of these white wax crayons to just put in a very light resist. Later, if you needed, you could sort of scratch it away with a fingernail or an X-Acto knife. So if I wanted to protect this white band in the shirt, I could lightly just use that wax resist. You could also use some masking tape for that purpose. You're gonna go through a lot of these different test strips as you're working in layers, in areas, but always from lighter spaces down into darker details, probably from a bigger brush, okay, down to a smaller brush. So light to dark, general to specific, until we are happy campers. And the portrait will emerge over the course of several classes and several days, allowing the layered paint to dry in between.